happy because there is nothing to happy about.
Yeah, it's quite pathetic the way the country is going.
We distinguish each story accurately with analysis.
It's Hard Facts with Maryann Okon on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
It's 2025. The biggest conversations are happening on Hard Facts.
If one of Rebolo was genuinely interested in local government funds, would have protested to be cancelled.
Somebody is receiving 30,000 naira after serving the country for 5 years.
From the stories shaping Nigeria's future.
I've been dumping my mood for that whenever people are clapping, his praise singers, when they ought to be telling him the truth.
I mean, he did not do any remarkable thing in your state, and you are celebrating corruption time.
To real-time feedback from you, the citizens.
There is propaganda. They can never make it work. I will not support that tax reform.
If NBS is turning out very fake data to us because this data lacks empirical evidence.
We dig deep with the decision makers, hold the powerful accountable, and keep the conversation alive on social media. Join Maryann Okon every Monday to Friday, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. for the most interesting news and current affairs show on radio.
I'm so sorry. I hate it when people make assertions from very skewed and biased places.
Hard Facts on Nigeria Info 99.3. Let's talk.
All right, it's the nation's number one talk news and sports radio station, 99.3 Nigeria Info. 9 minutes gone past the 3 o'clock hour. Welcome to an abridged version of Hard Facts. I'm Maryann Okon. We're live, facebook.com/Nigeria Info FM. We're also live on YouTube, Nigeria Info FM. Today, we're going to be talking about the issue of insecurity, but from a very different perspective, a perspective that many people have been discussing this issue from. Now, very recently, a U.S. Congressman, Scott Perry, made some explosive allegations against the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, claiming that the agency had been indirectly funding terrorists like Boko Haram, including, ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Perry, a Republican representing Pennsylvania, made the claims during a submitted hearing on the government waste, stating that USAID allocates about $697 million annually to a sum or an amount which, half the time ends up in the hands of terrorist groups. Now, this story didn't end here. It got the attention of several Nigerians within and without. And of course, the members of the National Assembly had also sat on this issue, pushing for some sort of investigation to happen. Also recently, the Chief of Army Staff had spoken on international media about the fact that there were people who were actively, foreign people who were actively aiding and abating terrorist groups in Africa, especially in Nigeria, talking about the fact that they needed for international agencies, or rather government agencies, to speak, or countries like the United States, the United Nations, to speak on this issue, to try to push for investigation on these so-called funders. This was before this particular video from Congressman Perry hit the airwaves. Now, let's also not forget that recently there was a video that made it to the internet on I think February 11, if I'm not mistaken, of soldiers who were hit somewhere in the north. I'd like to start with that video, and then I'm going to introduce my guest. Remember, I brought Dr. Getso sometime 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were talking about the issue of insecurity, and he kept talking about the level of unwillingness to deal with the hydra-headed monster, which is insecurity, which is terrorism. Now, I brought him back by popular demand to have this conversation because whether we like it or not, this conversation is not dead yet. The conversation is still on. Let me just quickly play this video for you. This video was shot by soldiers themselves. They put a timestamp on it by what they said. And let's take a listen, then I'll bring my guest into the conversation. In case you're just joining us, the program is Hard Facts, 99.3 Nigeria Info. We're live on YouTube and Facebook. You can see that video come up right now, but I want to play it from, let's see where I can play it from. Okay, from someone that's clearer, and then you can have a better audio from that video. Then, of course, my guest is going to join the conversation.
Assalamu alaikum, people. See Boko Haram don't come here. 114 battalion. Wala. Show us safe.
I don't dislodge also.
Show me here.
See, I don't dislodge.
Now where we come. See.
Bless of don't die.
Show me. Of him don't die.
Bless he don't die.
Oh, God.
Don't die.
You people should see.
Don't die.
This is 114 battalion Bita. I mean Bita. Peridang. When I see our MRAP here, when I see our BNP, they don't all these lodges, pursuers carry everything we go use. Of them don't die. No wala, 9 time reach. You people should not worry. Of them don't die. No wala. Our people will bullet touch them. No wala. God day. No wala. Mush no worry people. See when they see 114 battalion. 114 battalion. I mean battalion. Now this what we did today? 12 ba? 11. 2025.
2025 or more.
2 January. 2 what time bill?
You could tell from the way that they're yelling. They lost a colleague of theirs to the hit by Boko Haram, and they kept saying Ofem, which is obviously a name from Central Cross River, a soldier who was hit by Boko Haram. And this also just paints a picture of what's happening out there for the soldiers who are facing this guerrilla warfare. My guest is a security intelligence professional, and he's been here before. Dr. Yahuza Getso, it's so good to have you join us. Thank you so much for being part of the show today. I mean, I started with that video so that people can understand what our soldiers are exposed to every single day. Even though we're still yet to understand what's at the core of the terrorism that continuously is claiming lives of innocent Nigerians every day. Let's start with that video before we go into the USAID issue. What feeling do you get from that video? I'm sure you didn't see the video, but you could hear what the guys were saying.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk. I must commend Nigerian military, Army, Air Force, Navy, and the other paramilitary that they have been working together, working hard to keep Nigeria safe. Sometimes I wonder when I hear Nigerians saying that Nigerian military are not doing anything, or Nigerian security operatives are not doing anything. I used to laugh, and it used to touch me, because I know these guys have girlfriends, they have children, they have wives, they have mothers, they have friends, and they're also physically and socially and psychologically fit. So they too will want to be associated with both social, sexual, economic, moral, and other perspective of the day-to-day activities that they are being prevented from participating simply because of the nature of their job. Many times you find them in the middle of the forest, in the middle of hard-to-reach and difficult terrain, in the midst of areas that you cannot even be able to comfortably spend 3 minutes, but their life have been there in the last 5, 6, 10 years, or even more than that. And they are struggling and hustling, and on daily basis, they are there under the sun or in the rain. In any circumstance, you still find them there. The main objective and the main reason for them being there is to provide provide protection for life and property, to provide required support for the internal security, which is not supposed to be managed by the military. And at the same time, they are always at the border in their efforts to ensure territorial protection of our territorial integrity. So when somebody says that the military are not doing anything, there are a number of roads, the number of motorable and non-motorable locations, mountains, as well as other places of forest. I normally pray, let your car broke down on the access when you are passing by, so that you will know the value of what the military and the paramilitary and all the security agencies and government is doing. We must not take their life for granted. They are human. They will want to sleep their wives always, like I do. They will want to eat what they want, to choose varieties of what we are choosing, the way we are choosing. But they don't have choice. In many cases and instances, they can't even have access to where to buy the bread, where to get Lipton, where to get a cube of sugar, where to get an egg to fry it, Indomie, and the rest of it. But you are at your own leisure. You are just relaxing. If these guys are not doing anything, I wouldn't have found myself comfortably sitting here discussing with you at the extreme edge of the northeastern part of the country while you are at the extreme edge of the northwestern part of the country. If not because of the military, if not because of the paramilitary, if not because of the enabling environment for which they have been producing, we wouldn't have been able to deliver, to discuss, and even to agree on time, and even to access your message at least 2-3 days ago that you sent it. So those who lost their life, we condole, we send our condolences to defense headquarters and the Army headquarters, Air Force headquarters, and Navy headquarters. And those among the DSS and the police and other paramilitary agencies will also send our condolences to them. It is really painful. They are being faced with serious challenges, very difficult and very hard. I normally visit almost all the locations, all the brigades of guard, the unit commands, and the rest of it. Most of the divisional police offices, go and see how they are being barricaded with stone and ashes and so on, and drums of fully with the sand and so on. But here you are moving normal life. So those, even at the police station, divisional police offices, they are finding it difficult because their life is at stake. Their life is in danger. It's in danger. They can always be attacked. So we must commend and encourage the Nigerian security operatives that you can do it. We believe you have the capacity, and we believe you can deliver, and we believe you are doing your best, even though your best is not enough.
Okay.
Notwithstanding, we believe you have the capacity, and we believe you are doing your best, but your best is not enough, because you are not really hitting the nail on the head. You are rather hitting the wood and leaving the nail after putting it on the wood. So there are issues, many challenges to be discussed as far as security operations is concerned in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's talk about why more and more of our soldiers are exposed, because we've heard all kinds of allegations that half the time they get intel that these guys are operating in a certain place, but they get ready to move to those places, and then someone calls them, someone in who's highly placed in the army would say, oh, just hold on for a bit, and by the time they finally get to the place, these guys have already carried out whatever actions they want to, destroyed the place, stolen, and then when they show up, that's the army. These guys have already done the deed. We're talking about we're pointing at the fact that there might be moles in our army. Remember, again, I want to remind you what a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria said about former military generals having a hand in what's been happening in terms of terrorism. And now these young men are they're forced to do what they naturally wouldn't do. As soldiers, you shouldn't be doing that, but then they had to, because obviously it seems like
yes, I this is the last years, and in the development of the country, those countries are the indigenous of the local also build by putting in political we can always how we and how we and Jordan I will be
I'm sorry to be alive for beg it's a charity talking about hunting program rights.
So listen to you top 5 Nigeria law.
Secondary schools, 4 p.m. we'll see a tough matchup between Oluwa Pamela Rayo, Praise Oyeniro, and Ike Precious Ifoma on the topic. School grades are an accurate reflection of intelligence. That's not all. The 5 p.m. debate will feature Mofi Foluwa Dereti going up against Osigwe Dora on the topic. Legislators should have term limits. I Beg to Differ is supported by Obi Weezy and Chrisland Schools. Prize money sponsor, Tollywood College, Lagos. For sponsorship inquiries, send an email to info@nigeriainfo.fm. I be one section.
For talk. Whether politics or shitty and
Germany, the state has allegedly renewed for the lack of horizon on them, and that's the God also this from the state governments of created in the all of the rest of the UAID program needs sessions strengthened for option very to others. Ash carries away and she likes to this session. I guess Yahuza so has to some who's in understand someone has he spoke out and finding some solution. Well, he asked it how not even so in terms of your sabotage in answering all the questions that have been raised by the public. How come, he also asked, that these same people that we've continued to say they live amongst us, we know them. How come constituencies, local governments, state governments have not been able to find a solution in getting these people, sharing intelligence? But then, Dr. Getso, many people will say that talk is cheap. That if you are actually involved in this operations, you know that it's not as easy as you make it sound. There are those who say that, look, intelligence gathering is something that, especially dealing with a guerrilla warfare, which is not as usual as the normal, war that we get engaged in, that there's a lot, involved, especially when we remember what happened with the Chibok girls. They kept telling us that they were in Sambisa and the forest was, a certain way. It was difficult to find them, to maneuver. I remember also speaking with Sheikh Gumi at some time, and I asked him why these bandits, why he thought these bandits were doing what they were doing. And he said that it's because they've been abandoned by the government. And I asked, do you know where these bandits are? Because you seem to be speaking more, for them. And he said, well, he does know where they are. And the army cannot say that they don't know where these bandits are. Do you share the same opinion with Sheikh Gumi?
During my last discussion a couple of weeks ago, I have said that I know all the bandits. I know all their locations. And I know all the Boko Haram, and I know all their locations. And as former USAID, US government staff in Nigeria, a domestic staff, and as someone trained by Israel, Bulgaria, and America, as far as security, intelligence, and investigation is concerned, if at all, after I left the services of the US, Israel, and Bulgaria and Canadian government, I became the chief executive officer of my own self, where I became the managing director of the Eagles Integrated Security and Logistics Company. And I keep moving around all those locations where bandits, Boko Haram, IFOP, committing their atrocities. So if I, as a bloody civilian that have never war or signed any oaths, taking oaths of being either DSS, police, civil defense, army, air force, and so on and the rest, keep repeating myself that I know the locations of these guys, and I said the government and the security agencies, those who are hearing me, they know they know where the criminals are. And they know they know the criminals. And they know they can reach out to the criminals. And if they don't really know who are the criminals and who are the terrorists, who are the Boko Haram, who are the bandits, who are the IPOP agitators and the rest of it, how have they been telling us that there was time when there was a dialogue between the Nigerian government or the Sokoto, Kebbi, Katsina, Zamfara, Kaduna, Niger, and other, Kogi, Nasarawa, Benue, and the rest of it, Taraba, Adamawa, Borno, Yobe, Gombe, Bauchi, and the rest of it. There has been a dialogue with Boko Haram. How do they load their arms? And how have they been able to reach out to the bandits in the northwestern part of the country and north central part of the country? And how have the government and the security operative reach out to them if they don't know them? If they don't know where they are? Do they just ask the air to tell them, to give them the information? Then there must be a connection. There must be a relationship. There must be a knowledge of who they are. And how do they get to know the name of Bella Turji and the rest of them? All the Kachalla, all the Sububu that have been deleted, or those that have been deleted among the Abukaka and the rest of others in the Niger Delta, in the southeast, the Sheikah of Boko Haram in the northeastern part of the country, the rest of those who have been attacked in Zaria, Funtua, Katsina, and all other part of Katsina states, all other part of 14 local government of Zamfara state, all other part of 21 local government of Sokoto state, all other part of the other local government in Kebbi, Niger, Kogi, Benue, Nasarawa, Plateau, and the rest of it. How do they reach out to them? Do they reach out to them through Dr. Getso or Dr. Gumi? I'm sure they must have reached out to them without my knowledge. They must have reached out to them without my consent. I reach out to them without their consent. I conduct investigations, and I go around all the forests and all the hard to reach and difficult terrain. And you cannot tell me that Sambisa forest is not accessible. Who said that Sambisa forest is not accessible? If Sambisa forest is not accessible, how do I, as a bloody civilian, access it? I access the Sambisa forest down to Cameroon, down to Chad, down to Central Africa, down to Niger Republic, down to Benin Republic, down to Ghana.
Let's come back.
Down to Mali, down to Sierra Leone, down to many parts of Africa that this forest is linked. Which means the Boko Haram are known. Of course, the difference between Boko Haram and that of bandits in the northwestern part of the country is that the Boko Haram, they don't have identity. Anybody in the northeastern part of the country and all the states where Boko Haram are operating can be a Boko Haram because they don't have identity. Yes, of course, they are difficult and hard to identify. But there are certain magnanimity and certain stereotype, intelligence stereotype that I am using to identify who are the Boko Haram. What have the trained personnel of the Nigerian government been doing that they are unable to trace them and to deal with them?
Before we come to that part, because I need us to sorry, doctor, I need us to establish. I'm sorry.
We have to them. We conduct dialogue. The governor of Zamfara and governor of Katsina State, they say we know them. They are citizens of our state. So if government of Nigeria is not ready to respect the opinion of a trained trained Nigerian by American government, Israeli government, Canada government, and the rest, that is the Yahuza Getso. If they cannot accept it, why can't they accept it from the governors?
Okay, before we come back to that, because this is, I'm sorry, this is an aspect that I want us to talk about very slowly so that we can get to the how and why we're still here. But let me come back to the USAID part of this conversation. The government is pushing for an investigation, seemingly, with the call for, the heads of security agencies to explain and investigate. With all of the concerns that you've raised, what's the guarantee that there will be, of course, this case involves you, so you cannot necessarily speak for it because you used to work for the USAID, so you obviously have a little bit of a bias. But who's to say that if there be any credibility to these allegations, that we will be able to investigate it thoroughly and come up with something? Plus the fact that you've painted a picture of some sort of lax in terms of dealing with the issue of terrorism. Who's to say that we will deal with this investigation as we should?
Well, thank you very much for asking this question, and it is quite an interesting question. I have been responding to this through local and international media, and I really appreciate that you are bringing it to Lagos to also know about it. Yes, of course. I think I consider all these investigations invasions by nationally and whatsoever, getting the and so one can see. Compromising these society of does that mean the objective operations and options is the number of the never that is question. That in the both of national the defense agency and defense agency and all the military agencies that are generating mobilized intention for area have been the war years that are independence. Or what does that mean? Question number 3. Does that mean that there has been a collaboration, partnership, and colludence, as well as connivance and the internal sabotage, negligence by the Nigerian government, that they have been working with all these agencies and the president of Federal Republic, presidents with S of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and all other head of security agencies that have been collaborating, corroborating, partnering, signing, participating in the training, intelligence training and capacity building of our military, paramilitary intelligence investigators, as well as other operatives and so on and so forth, and all the diplomatic relations over years. Nigerian government have not been able to identify this until and unless somebody from the US made mention and allegation. And what we from that question, what is normally part of the training and the audition, and in Nigeria, even the on the area of the EU presented, keep hitting just to hit politics. Then number 1, yes, of the the members of the National Assembly, they are putting a question of mark. Are they members of the Senate? Are they members of the Assembly? They are putting the question on their own integrity. So the when being independent, is the answer independent? Means something else, something wrong. Have they not been able all this work in doing members of the Assembly listen to them? Because of the young minister, aware of the science without credit, asking him against the UAC and to the information again by.
But I want on the music aspect of the view and this is the main part of that the state organized said European he talked of the company and save life of the USAID, but doesn't mean in what we do rich. That's something we make now for you. Let me play a clip of an audio clip of the chief of army staff. When he was speaking to a foreign media about what's been happening. Just take a listen.
We're killing people. We're actually not
I know the clip.
Guess what?
I know the clip. You don't need to play it.
All the humanitarian agencies working there. You have the UN working, local and international organizations are working. Are we saying they are complicit? There is nothing we're doing in the back. So if they don't say it, which means Amnesty International is equal, and Amnesty is equally there. So which means they're equally accusing all these other organizations of being complicit.
So just to be clear,
So he's saying that, look, as much as he's talking about the fact that this allegations, you say you have it's in your head, perfect. Now there is an aspect of that interview where he's still calling on the United Nations to come to the aid of Nigeria in looking for the sponsors, the funders of terrorism in Nigeria, because he makes a claim that most of these men, when they're caught with foreign currency. How do they get hold of these monies and these guns? Go ahead.
How many service chiefs have we had before him? How many head of security agencies, head of intelligence, head of National Intelligence Agency? How many DGSSs we have had before him? How many chief of defense staffs we have had? I asked a question, simple question. Does that mean Nigeria have been signing? Because I know all operations and activities we have had. As a USAID contractor, I know all activities where we had. Nigerian government had to review the document, sign it before we go into operations. And if we go into operations, what I expected from the Nigerian Intelligence Office of the National Security Advisor and other security heads, as well as the other military and paramilitary, as well as the National Intelligence Agency and the Defense Intelligence Agency, Military Intelligence Agency, and all other relevant agencies, force agencies, intelligence agency, and the rest of them, is to follow up, to track, to monitor, to ensure that what has been signed is what USAID and other non-governmental agencies have been doing. If there were something wrong, what have we been doing? Have we been sleeping in the last 65 years since we got independence? Or are we still questioning the sovereignty and the integrity of Nigeria? What have we been doing over the time? Yes, of course. I must commend General Christopher Musa for being that bold. I have listened to the interview. It is in my head I have memorized it. It is part of what I have always in my head. And many other interviews he granted. He is very intelligent, very emotional, very responsible, very humble, very dedicated, and very patriotic senior officer that Nigeria must be proud of. And I am proud of him also. As a Nigerian, I must not be part of the system that will cheat Nigerian sovereignty and Nigerian government. Of course, during the operation, since I have participated actively for 17 or even more than years in the operations and activities related to intelligence, investigation, and security in Nigeria and many other developing and underdeveloped countries in Africa and Asia, I believe, of course, there may be 1 or 2, 3 common mistakes, which probably could have been fished out by the capacity, ability, and agility and the training that we have spent huge amount of money over time and over years training our personnel on intelligence, on security, on investigation, on monitoring, on supervising, on stereotype intelligence, fast tracking, and the rest of it. So I believe I must commend him for so doing. I really commend him for the bold statements he has been making and how intelligent and how patriotic he has been trying his best. And I believe Nigeria needs someone like General Christopher Musa and his alike for Nigeria to move to the promised land.
Yeah, but the question on the mind of the average Nigerian today is sorry, doctor. The question on the minds of the average Nigerian right now is not about Christopher Musa or whoever comes after him. Are you saying that if the congressman is wrong, or rather, if he's right, you're saying that then it makes every single person who's occupied an office, whether it be in intelligence or as a politician, is complicit? Does it also mean if the flip side is a case where maybe it's just an allegation that has no bearing? You're still asking the question, how come we're still unable to deal with this issue of terrorism? Is it that someone somewhere doesn't want it to end? And is that someone in power?
I believe that the allegation had bearing.
Okay.
But I ask the question. There are 4 things. 1, internal sabotage. 2, inability to manage, identify, stereotype negligence that we have. 3, the competitiveness, the inability to manage the competing circumstances between the sister agencies in the security operatives. 4, we have had senators who have wasted 25 years in time after the other, session after the session, between 1999, 2003, and the rest up till today, that they have not been able. We have Senate Committee on National Security and National Intelligence. And part of what I made a presentation sometime in 2007 before the committee, and I participated sometimes in the year 2001 and 2002 before the Senate of the Committee on the National Security and National Intelligence, and before the Committee of the House. I attended a public hearing before the Committee of National Intelligence and Security and National Intelligence in the state in the National Assembly. And I have reached out to many of the security heads over all these questions. These questions have answers more than 20 years before the guy from the American Senate.
Congress.
I have read these allegations in 2007. I have read these questions in 2009. I have read these questions in 2013. I have read these questions before the Senate Committee on Security and National Intelligence in the year 2002 and 2003, just before they get out. And even in some of my interviews during this this Senate, I have also raised a certain concern with some of the senators, even though individual with the present Senate leadership. So I think it is not something new. Okay. It's only that we have been able to answer your questions, which I will give you an answer now. Someone
in 1 minute, because we need to take calls. Go ahead.
Is being beneficial to what has been happening, because I said 35% of what Muhammadu Buhari spent during his 8 years, 35% of the money budgeted, 35% of 1 year of his 8 years if can be utilized judiciously, I can design a perfect system that we can be able to manage the security challenges that we have in Nigeria by 65 to 70%. So it means there are issues related to corruption in the industry, there are issues in the cycle, there are issues related to the inability to have the political and administrative will, there are issues related to inability to hold anybody accountable. We continue to promote officers from one position to the other without checkmating and comparing and kind of conducting an appraisal based on the performance. We are only promoting them, we are only decorating them, and we don't ask questions.
Okay.
We have not been held accountable and responsible. We have been given people responsibility. The Inspector General of Police that we have had, many of them, to the one that we have now, the service chiefs, the head of other security agencies, the commanding officers, the commissioners of police, the DIGs, the AIGs, the unit commanders, the garrison, the battalion commanders, and the rest of them. All those responsibilities of the DGs of the DSS, the DGs of the NIA, the directors of the state security services in their respective states, and even at the Abuja.
So all you're saying is probe, and we're not doing that.
Accountable. And
Great.
I have over 67 questions to ask.
Okay.
In relation to
because we don't have time. I need to open up the phone lines, Doctor. So you're saying.
Let me go to
yes.
To the listeners. Go ahead.
Yes, let's take some calls because the phone lines have been ringing non-stop. So bottom line, you're saying we're not probing, we're not asking for accountability, we're just promoting, we rinse and restart. Okay. Well, Lagos, join the conversation. This has to be a whole day's conversation, if you ask me. But join the conversation. 0201-465-7190. That's the number for you to call. We're live on Facebook.com/Nigeria Info FM. We're speaking with Dr. Yahuza Getso, and he is a security intelligence professional. One time worked for the USAID, and he still obviously is in the business of security, and that's why we're talking about this USAID allegation and, of course, the issue of terrorism. Join the conversation. We'd like to hear from you. Go straight to the point. Hello. Welcome to Hard Facts.
Good afternoon, Dr. Maryann Okon.
Yes, quickly, go ahead.
My name is Godwin, calling from Lapwell.
Yes.
And thank you, the guest. It is an established notice that with so far what has been happening unto our rulers, including the northern elite, they are able to come out sincerely to handle this situation holistically without any compromise. Then we shall only be continuing in this manner, rigmaroling without result. Issue of corruption, nepotism, insincerity on the part of our rulers and the northern leaders, they are the major cause of all these things. What about the list? From USA or UAE. That was given to Buhari, what have they done to it?
Okay.
So
right.
they all know the truth.
All right. Thank you very much. 60 seconds is all you have. Go straight to the point. Hello, Igwe Victor is calling us. Go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon, Maryann.
Yes.
I have a question for your guest. The question I want to ask him is, why is he using the same brush to paint everybody? I think the U.S. only mentioned the sabotage of the sponsors of Boko Haram. So I want to know why he is inclining on his submission to self-determination group. Why is he using one brush to paint all of them? Because the U.S.
Igwe, I know that you are going to pick on that, but have people been killed in the southeast in the name of IPOB?
Everybody knows.
Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No.
So people have not been killed in the southeast in the name of IPOB, right? People have not been killed.
What is happening?
No, answer me now. We're not playing games here. Has there been a group who is using the name of IPOB to terrorize people in the southeast? Yes or no?
He has to.
Okay, your 60 seconds is over. Thank you very much for calling. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon. My name is Amos. I'm calling from Ikoyi.
Go ahead, Amos.
My question is this. I believe he's a He's a member of any of NGO, right?
Yes, he owns a security outfit.
Okay, my question is this. What recommendation has he made to the National Assembly?
Did you listen? Did you listen to him? Because he said he made several presentations to the National Assembly and committees.
Let him because right now I have a senator that I normally reply or kind of give a report to anything I see. You know, so I want him to name them so that I can be able to reach my senator. When the service chief has been invited, this is what you speak against.
Okay.
And then let's see what we have.
All right, lovely. Well, Dr. Getso, I'll give you the last word on that guy because he's saying he obviously says he has a senator who he complains to when he sees issues that have to do with insecurity, and he's saying, what are some of the recommendations you've made? So please just think about it while I take a few more calls. Hello, welcome to Hard Facts.
Maryann, good evening.
Good evening. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Onari Malik speaking.
Go ahead.
Maryann, the ability to probe and the ability to share will never allow Nigeria to work. And my problem is this: one day, the other ranks of the military will come together. It will be good for the senior officers. Because every time they are the one being sacrificed as a ram, the senior ones are not. If the government itself feels its politics all the time, one day is coming. Other Sudan that you see they are fighting, it's all these stupid things that are causing it. When you don't check me people, if a former chief of army that died by aircraft said you are asking about money, the president was there before I came into the office. They should ask him with the report that is down on the Senate. They should look at that report and work on it. Till today, nobody did it about it. It's all about to share the money. Good evening.
Thank you for calling, Malik. I want to read a few messages and give the good doctor an opportunity to respond to some of your questions and your queries. I've seen a lot of you asking questions about some of the things that he said. So let me just read some messages. Kayode from Ikotun here says, Maryann, quite surprised that someone like this is in Nigeria that has taken the Nigerian Armed Forces years to conclude the affairs of Boko Haram and banditry in the north. This, your guest, knows his onion on security matters. Thank you very much. This one here says, good evening, Maryann and your guests. Until our rulers and some northern leaders are ready and sincere and truthful with the insecurity in Nigeria, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, there shall be no end to this big issue of insecurity. Corruption, insecurity, deceitful from the northern leaders and government are the major problem. Have you forgotten about Dr. Melafia, the former deputy governor of the CBN of blessed memory? Do you remember his interview? He says, so unfortunate. Godwin from Lakowe, thank you for your message. Quickly, Doctor, let me come to you. I have just 1 minute before I wrap up. Somebody asked you, what are some of the recommendations you would make? Because he obviously wants to take this back to his senator representing him. He also sounds like he's from your part of the country.
There are seven simple recommendations I can make. One, there is a need to conduct a thorough investigation on how millions and trillions of money being spent during the 8 years of Buhari administration and all other security strata in the 17 years to date. How have the money been budgeted, released? How have they really been spent? One. Two, there is need to conduct thorough allegation and to hold those traditional and religious leaders accountable for participating, both the Muslim clerics and the Christian clerics and the business philanthropists in the northern part of the country among Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa and Fulani have been found wanting, participating directly or indirectly in fueling the issues of Boko Haram and the banditry, and they have not been handled well. So if they can be handled well, then something will be responsible.
All right, we have to go. I'm so sorry. We don't have time, Doctor. I'm so sorry. Time is fast spent and we have to go. But I want to say thank you, Dr. Yahuza Getso. Always a pleasure to have you in the studio. I wish we could have a whole day to have this conversation, but I promise.
To share his number with me, he can get you can share his number, my number with him for further discussions.
No problem.
I'm ready to provide them a free service for that purpose.
All right, thank you. Dr. Yahuza Getso is a security intelligence professional speaking to us via Zoom. Thank you once again for coming on the show, Doctor.
And goodbye. Thank you for the opportunity given.
All right,
goodbye,
thank you. All right, well, Lagos, this is where we wrap things up. Femi Abong Daniels and the kids are standing by for I Beg to Differ. The round of 32 is still on. But follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, MIMIEYO, or just search for Maryann Okon. I Beg to Differ begins right now. Stay with us.
We are in a time where people yearn for information.
Information is
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's